Hi guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Relive the Music. So this one today is all about the year 2008. So coming up a wee bit later on, I'll be talking about albums released by Guns N' Roses, For My Valentine, Slipknot and many more. And in the gig front, I'll be talking about seeing Extreme for the first time, and also a triple header which saw Blackstone Cherry, Def Leppard and Whitesnake hit the stage at the SECC. But to set the scene, I'll go through some of the news events from 2008, some of the TV and film, the top 3 songs in the UK, more album releases, and then the gigs that I went to. So my name's Ricky and welcome to my channel, Relive the Music. Okay, I just want to say a big hello to my returning viewers. So that's Glasgow Harley Rider, City Build Minecraft, Tony's Travels, at 1986 Slippy, Good Guy Chucky, Stephen Blake, and Ian C666. So just on that, it might be worth subscribing to Ian's channel. I'll put the link in the description below. He likes the same sort of bands, and some of the gigs he's up a wee bit closer than myself, so he has some really good shorts on there. I'll put his channel description below in the comments. Okay, so now to some of the news stories in 2008. So we'll start with the football. So this was the European Championships, which was held in Austria and Switzerland. So this was won by Spain, beating Germany 1-0 in the final. And the goal was scored by Fernando Torres, who was of Liverpool at the time. He scored with a beautiful little chip after a lovely through ball by Xavi. Rockstar released Grand Theft Auto 4, which was one of the most expensive video games to develop with a budget of $100 million. In its first 24 hours of release though, it sold 3.6 million copies, generating $310 million worth of sales, and in the first week that rose to 500 million. As of 2013 it has sold 25 million copies worldwide. The company Air Bed and Breakfast first launched and actually shortened their title the following year to just Airbnb to avoid any confusion with airbed and air mattresses. So this was an alternative form of accommodation whereby you could rent out somebody's house or apartments to stay in. In the tennis world, Spain's Rafael Nadal beat Switzerland's Roger Federer in the 2008 men's Wimbledon final. So this is widely regarded as one of the best tennis matches ever played. So Nadal had only ever previously won a major on clay, and Federer, he was riding a 65 game winning streak on grass. So Nadal triumphed in 5 sets. He won the first 2 sets and then lost the next 2 on tie breaks before winning 9-7 in the final set. So the match lasted 4 hours and 48 minutes, although the actual game or the day took over 7 hours because there was a couple of rain delays. This would be the last ever final at Wimbledon affected by rain, because in 2009 they would erect a retractable roof cover. And in the women's final, you had revenge for Venus Williams beating her younger sister Serena. And this would be Venus's 5th Wimbledon title and 7th major overall. And in fact, this was actually the last major title that she won. In the US, Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy, marking the climax of the subprime mortgage crisis. This was the largest bankruptcy filing in US history, involving more than $600 billion in assets. And the last story I'll talk about in 2008 was the launch of Spotify. So this is actually a Swedish-owned company, albeit it trades in the stock exchange in America. So it's an audio streaming service whereby you can download and listen to your favourite artists or albums or songs. So it's got 680 million active monthly subscribers, of which 280 million of those are paying subscribers. So there's 2 different levels of service. Like there's a free one where you get adverts every 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so, and then there's a premium service. So this was a game changer, just delivering the way that people could receive music content. I know myself, basically up until that point I was buying loads of CDs at HMV and Music Zone and FOP, and then at this point you could download the songs digitally. So I think it was a great thing because you could, if you were a paying subscriber, then it was a good way to discover new bands. So as much as it maybe harmed sales of bands, you actually could find new bands, and the hope would be then you would go and see them in concert, and they'd make the revenue that way rather than lost sales through a physical format. Okay, so now to the TV of 2008. So first up was an epic series that probably most of you might have watched, and that was Breaking Bad. So this had 5 series in total. It starred Bryan Cranston as the main character, Walter White. He was a dispirited chemistry teacher who just found out that he had stage 3 lung cancer, and he goes into business with one of his former pupils, Jesse Pinkman, and he goes by the name Heisenberg to disguise his real name, and basically they cook up methamphetamine and they sell it to local drug lords and stuff, and it follows the adventures. And yeah, it's a really good binge watch. Okay, and in the UK we got the series The In-Betweeners, which was a comedy programme which lasted for 30 minutes per episode, and I thought this was hilarious, albeit I didn't actually discover it in this year. I think it was a few years later before I watched them and was able to watch like all 3 series in a row. So it was basically set in a fictional high school called Rudge Park, and the main character was Simon Bird, who played Will Mackenzie, and he just moved from a private school, and he kind of narrates the episode, and it features in like 4 main characters. So you've got him, and then you've got Simon Cooper, he's like the hothead one of the group, and then you've got Jay, who always hits out with all the sexual innuendo. He's always claiming that he's shagged this girl and shagged that girl when he's not done any, and his dad takes the piss out of him quite a lot. And then you've got Neil, who's like the idiot one of the group, but he's actually the most sexually experienced. So yeah, I thought this was a really funny programme, and it would get its own movie a couple of years later. Okay, so now to the top selling movies of 2008. So coming in third place was Harrison Ford returning in the 4th instalment of Indiana Jones, and this was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So in this, they're searching for a telepathic crystal skull, and I remember going to watch this at the time at the Odeon in Renfield Street, because I fell asleep for like the last hour, so I never found out what happened. It wouldn't be until it was released in DVD the next year that we'd get to know what happened in it. The second best-selling film of 2008 was Iron Man, and this was an American superhero film based off of the Marvel character of the same name, and it starred Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, who is Iron Man, and the film follows his escape from captivity by a terrorist group, and you see Stark building a mechanised suit of armour to become the superhero Iron Man. Okay, and the best-selling film of 2008 is The Dark Knight, and this was the second instalment of the Dark Knight trilogy, and it featured Christian Bale as Batman and Heath Ledger as the Joker. Now, some of you might not know, but Heath Ledger actually passed away just prior to making this film. He died from an accidental prescription drug overdose, and prior to the film going out, there was a lot of criticism about his selection as the choice of playing the Joker, but I think he absolutely smashed it. I think this is probably like the best Batman film that I've seen, and I thought he played the character really, really well in it, really dark and a good bit of humour with it as well. So the plot follows the vigilante Batman, Police Lieutenant James Gordon and District Attorney Harvey Dent, or Two-Face, who form an alliance to dismantle the organised crime in Gotham City. Their efforts are derailed by the Joker, who seeks out to test how far Batman will go to save the city from chaos. Okay, so now to the top 3 selling singles in the UK of 2008. So in third place, it was Welsh soul singer Duffy with the song Mercy. You know you got me begging you for mercy. The second best selling song in the UK was actually a collaboration of artists who were the finalists of the 5th series of the TV show The X Factor. So they did a cover of Mariah Carey's Hero, and this was actually a charity song raising money for the Help for Heroes charity, which was set up in 2007. So Help for Heroes is a British charity which supports members of the British Armed Forces community with their physical and mental health, as well as their financial, social and welfare needs. So I remember this, you could actually buy wristbands, and I remember buying mine here. I dug it out just for this video. I think I paid £5 for it. And a great cause. I don't think we support like our armed forces enough, certainly not the way they do in the US, and it's such a shame. Okay, and coming in at the number 1 spot for the best selling song in the UK in 2008 was Alexandra Burke with the song Hallelujah, and this would also be the Christmas number 1 that year. Okay, so now to the albums of 2008. So first up is AC/DC with their 15th studio album Black Ice. So this had 15 songs and it lasted about 56 minutes long. So this was actually the longest gap between albums. So it was an 8-year gap before their previous album release, which was Stiff Upper Lip in 2000. And it was also the last album to feature rhythm guitarist Malcolm Young, who would leave the band in 2014 after being diagnosed with dementia, and who passed away in 2017. So it was a typical AC/DC album, the usual kind of rock and roll beat sound throughout it. Brian Johnson's vocals, I thought, were strong on it. Some really good songs such as the opener, Rock and Roll Train, Skies on Fire, Big Jack, and yeah, it was a good, strong album. Okay, Kentucky band Blackstone Cherry gave us their second album called Folklore and Superstition, and this had 13 tracks on it. And personally, I actually favoured the slower ones in this. So you had the likes of Blind Man, Please Come In, Things My Father Said, and Peace Is Free. And I think sort of Peace Is Free and Things My Father Said would be a staple of the live shows from this point on. Fall Out Boy gave us their 4th studio album called Folie à Deux. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm assuming it's French, and I didn't do French at school. Anyway, there was 13 tracks on it and it lasted 51 minutes long, and it didn't sell as well as their previous album Infinity and High, and I must admit I'm not as familiar with this album. I've not listened to this a great deal of times, but the tracks that stand out for me would be Headfirst Slide into Cooperstown on a Bad Bet, which is a hell of a long title for a song track, and my favourite from the album is I Don't Care. Okay, Welsh band Funeral for a Friend gave us their 4th album called Memory and Humanity, and this was meant to be a return to the sound of the kind of Casually Depressed and Deep in Conversation album. However, as much as I think it was a bit sort of more melody and riffy like that, I don't think it had as much sort of screaming or harsh vocals on it, which I first liked when I first heard Funeral for a Friend. So if I was choosing songs from it, then I'm going for Waterfront Dance Club, Can't See the Wolves from the Trees, Rules and Games, and Kicking and Screaming. Shinedown gave us their 3rd studio album called The Sound of Madness, and I thought this was an excellent album. In fact, it's probably my most favourite Shinedown album, and it's what really got me into their music. So it had 11 songs on it, lasting about 42 minutes, and Brent Smith's vocals on it were just excellent, and none more so than the slow ones that were on it. So it opens up with Devour, which is quite fast paced, and then it goes into Sound of Madness, but some of the slower ones on it are the ones that really stand out. So Second Chance, I think that did like really well in the US when it was released as a single. I think it sold something like 3 million copies. And then you've also the likes of The Crow and the Butterfly on it. It's a really good album in my opinion. Slipknot gave us a fourth studio album called All Hope Is Gone, and this had 12 tracks on it and it lasted about 58 minutes. So this was a wee bit different from their previous versions. Like, although there's some hard songs on it, there's actually a couple of slow numbers. So Dead Memories, for example, and also like Snuff from it. If you are pushing me for the songs that I like though, most from it, then probably Sulphur, and the standout track for me was Psychosocial. I've done my time and I want out! English soft rock / pop band Yumi at Six gave us their debut album called Take Off Your Colours, and I really like this album. I think it's so easy to listen to. I think it's a really good album. So it's got 13 songs on it and it lasts about 51 minutes long, and you've got songs on it such as If I Were In Your Shoes, If You Run, Tigers and Sharks, Nasty Habits, and probably my favourite from the album is Save It For The Bedroom. I think that was the first one that I ever heard and brought them to my attention, or I might have seen the video on MTV. Too far, save it for the bedroom. Too far, save it for the bedroom. So now to a favourite band of mine at the time, and this was Bullet For My Valentine, and they released Scream, Aim, Fire. So this was their second album and the follow-up to The Poison, which was released in 2005. So it was always going to be a really difficult job to try and follow up the success of that debut album, but I think they did a good job. So this had 11 songs on it and it was about 53 minutes long, and some of the songs had a kind of more thrash sounding element to it than their first album. And I really liked the opener on it. I think it might have been the lead single, which was the title track, Scream, Aim, Fire. Just Matt's vocals on it, and you get Scream, Aim, Fire. It's really good to sing along for that one for the crowd. And then you've got Hearts Burst Into Fire, Eye of the Storm. There's a slow one on it as well, which I think is like the end track, Forever and Always. That's a good one as well. But my favourite from the album, without doubt, is Waking the Demon. And I always thought this would be like a brilliant like title track for like the darts players. You know, they've always got nicknames. I thought it'd be brilliant to welcome somebody on, and now here's the Demon, and then like on they come with like Waking the Demon song, or like a WWE wrestler. Or maybe there is a WWE wrestler with that, but I thought that would be a really good theme tune for it. Okay, and the last album I'll talk about is Chinese Democracy by none other than Guns N' Roses. So this was the long awaited album by them. 15 years since their last album in 1993, which was the covers album, The Spaghetti Incident. So I think I'd kind of lost a lot of the anticipation around this because it had been so long. Now this is one of the most expensive albums ever made. It's something like $13 million or 22 million in today's terms, adjusting for inflation. So this is because it had been in production for so long, and they've obviously the expenses of hiring the studio out, and then there was different people coming in and joining the band. It was just, I mean, if you look at Wikipedia on it, like, you could spend about a day trying to read the whole history on it. I kind of get fed up with it. But anyways, to an album itself, so it's one of those ones, when I first listen to it, it takes me a couple of times to listen to an album and really like it. I wasn't really that impressed with it. It's only really when I've gone back to it in the last few years. In fact, it was in the run up to them playing Bellahouston Park, I went back and revisited it, and then I got to enjoy some of the tracks on it. So there's 14 tracks in all on the album, and it lasts just over 71 minutes. So I think it was reported that they wrote something like 50 tracks for this, and they were going to sort of release like a trilogy. It's going to be 3 albums, and then there was talk of it being like a double album, and yeah, and it just ended up as one album. So there are some decent songs on it. Like the one I'm liking at the moment is IRS, and also you had Shackler's Revenge and Better and Street of Dreams. So yeah, all in all, it's a decent offering. I mean, Axel's vocals on it are obviously good. Like, I don't know how much was his actual voice and how much is being able to sort of, edit that in the studio. But yeah, it was good to finally hear some Guns N' Roses material. Okay, so if you go to a lot of live concerts like I do, then you probably want to invest in a set of earplugs if you don't already own one. So I've been using these ones for almost 2 years now, and I think they're great. I wouldn't be without them. So you actually get kind of 2 sets for the price of one in it. There's a medium pair and a sort of larger sized one. And you can also obviously use them for other things, like if you are gardening or if you go on holiday to try and block out the noise. I would highly recommend it. It would only set you back about the cost of a couple of pints of lager. Another thing that I just actually bought yesterday for my daughter was these ear defenders. So we're actually going to a tribute festival that I used to go to a lot down in Preston this weekend called Rock Prest. So she tried these on yesterday and really liked them. They get wee unicorns on them, but there's different designs. So I'll leave links to both in the description below. Okay folks, so lastly now to all the gigs that I went to in 2008. So if you've watched my Relive the Music videos from the start, you'll know that in one of them I said that I'd probably get to a moment in time where I'd be able to stumble across footage on YouTube from these concerts. So I think that moment is now. But this footage isn't actually from myself. So I didn't actually get my first video phone until the iPhone 4, which I think was 2010 or maybe 2011. But I've looked at all these different gigs and I've managed to, obtain, shall we say, quite a bit of footage. So I'm going to give thanks to some different YouTube channels in the description below, because I've basically screen recorded some of this footage to use in this video. And I will try and play some of the audio clips in between the songs, so it gives you a taste of the atmosphere. I can't really play too much of the songs or it'll get copyrighted, and I might need to take some of it out depending on what happens when I upload this. But anyway, I'm going to give a thanks to 2 channels in particular who still look like they're active at the moment. So that is Gigs, Concerts, Alba, and I think it's Weissheim. It's maybe a German channel. The rest of the ones that I took footage from, to be honest, look like kind of dormant accounts, and it's a shame. There was one girl, Jenna, who looks like a bit of a Made in Scotland fan, and she had some really good footage. In particular, she had some good footage of the Guns N' Roses gig from 2006. So you can check her channel out. I'll leave that in the description as well. Okay, so first up was Alter Bridge, and that was at the Carlin Academy. So this was obviously as part of their Blackbird tour from the album being released earlier that year. So they played 16 songs in total, and they had 6 from the One Day Remains album and 9 from Blackbird, and there was a cover of a Robert Johnson song, I don't really remember this, called Travelling Riverside Blues. So they opened up with Come to Life, and they went off after Metalingus, which was the 13th song, and then they came on for an encore to do another 3 songs, which were Broken Wings, the cover which I mentioned, and then they closed on Rise Today, which I always kind of think has a kind of bit of a Jesus feel about it or something. So yeah, it was a good gig. Okay, next up I had The Almighty at the Garage, and that was 15 quid to get in, and this was part of their 20th anniversary tour. So they played 21 songs in total. They played 5 each from Blood, Fire and Love and Soul Destruction, 4 from Power Tripping and 3 from Crank, and a couple others. So this was a strong set list throughout. You started off with Taking Hold, and then you had some really good ones in there, such as Crucify, Full Force Loving Machine, Jonestown Mind, and then sort of finished up, well, the 18th song was like Wild and Wonderful, and then went into Free and Easy, which they've sort of been doing that lately in the last few tours, the ones in 23 and 24. So they went off and then came back on for an encore with Little Lost Sometimes, and then finished it up with Sabotage, which is a Beastie Boys cover. You would know it if you heard it. And they actually only did that like 4 times in that year, so I'm not quite sure what the thought was behind like doing that song. Bit of a strange choice, I think. But anyway, it was a good gig throughout, and it was a strong set list. The only thing for me personally, and this is just all about opinion, is they had a couple of numbers from the Just Add Life album in it, which I'm not too keen on. So you had Do You Understand and All Sussed Out, which is the one with the like trombone on it, I think. But yeah, other than that, a really good gig. Okay, next up was Bullet for My Valentine at the Carlin Academy, and this was £17.50 to get in. So this was obviously in support of the most recent album, Scream, Aim, Fire. So this was good. Now, before they came on stage, apparently Still Remains and Skindred were on beforehand, but I don't really remember seeing Skindred. I'm not sure if I did or not. I can't honestly say hand on heart. But anyway, Bullet came on and they did 13 songs, which was kind of split evenly between the two albums. So I did find footage of this. There's footage of like a wall of death. Opened up with Scream, Aim, Fire off the new album, and they had all the bangers in there, like Four Words to Choke Upon, Tears Don't Fall, Suffocating Under Words of Sorrow. And then stuff off the new album, you had Eye of the Storm, Hearts Burst Into Fire, and then I do remember they actually closed on Waking the Demon. Now, I said earlier in the album section that was my favourite off the album, and I think that was an excellent choice to close the night on.
I guess you like that little piece of information, Glasgow, eh? Alright, so without further ado, I hope you're doing the words, because you're going to be on camera, like I said. This is Hearts Burst Into Fire. Thank you.
Okay, so now to a gig that had 3 bands, which I love, and this was Def Leppard, Whitesnake and Blackstone Cherry at the SECC, and this was £37.50 to get into, which was quite a lot of money back then. So first up you had Blackstone Cherry, and they played 7 songs. So they had 5 off of their debut album Blackstone Cherry, and only 1 off of Folklore and Superstition. So obviously that album wasn't released until about 3 months after this gig, so they played Blind Man from this, and they closed in a cover version of Jimi Hendrix's Voodoo Child. Okay, so next to take the stage was Whitesnake, and I was really excited to see them. So I first got into Whitesnake when I bought a cassette album of Slip of the Tongue from Missing Records in Oswald Street in Glasgow, and then I familiarised myself with like the greatest hits after that. So David Coverdale was in really good form. He still had a really good voice back then, in my opinion, and he was great with the crowd. He was lapping up. There was lots of interaction backward and forward with the crowd, and yeah, he put on a good show. So this was as part of their Good to Be Bad tour, promoting the album of the same name. So they did 4 songs from that album. However, the ones that went down best with the crowd were obviously the favourites. So the likes of Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City, Is This Love, Love Ain't No Stranger, and they ended on Still of the Night. Okay, so headlining the night was Sheffield's finest, Def Leppard. So this was great. I think this was the first time that I'd seen them as well. So they played 17 songs in total and mainly featured songs from the Hysteria album. I think there was 5 from that. So it had all the banging hits in there that you'd expect, such as Armageddon It, Hysteria, Animal, Photograph, Pour Some Sugar on Me, and then Rock of Ages. And then they went off and they did an encore of Bad Actress and Let's Get Rocked. So yeah, a thoroughly enjoyable night, lots of interaction with the crowd getting involved in it, singing back, and yeah, a really good gig.
A little bit of Bonnie Scotland. Ricky Warwick, who's one of my very best friends from a band called The Almighty. He taught me my first proper Scottish brogue, which I will now attempt to do. Away while you push! He kept saying it to me over and over. I didn't realise it was an insult for about 3 years.
Okay, next up was a wee tribute festival night. So this was called Monsters of Mock, and it was 15 quid, and that was at the garage. Now, I couldn't find anything online searching for this, so I can't quite remember all the bands that played at it. So I know Gallus Cooper was there, and they always team up with Made in Scotland, and I know Made in Scotland was there because I found footage of it. But I'm just wondering if anybody was there. Obviously, most of you are probably a Glasgow audience that watched this. Then let me know what the other bands were, if you can remember, because I'm pretty sure there was like a few different ones in the night. I don't know if we maybe got a Guns N' Roses tribute or something. Okay, next up was Funeral for a Friend at the ABC, Suckyall Street, and it was £15 to get in. So this was as part of their Memory and Humanity tour, supporting the recent album, and they played 13 songs in total. They played 4 from this album, but they played 5 from Casually Depressed and Deep in Conversation, which I think tells you that, you know, they knew that that was their strongest album, and they actually only played 1 from the previous album, Tales Don't Tell Themselves. But all in all, you know, it was a good night. So we had songs in there that I like, such as Juno, Streetcar, She Drove Me to Daytime Television, Kicking and Screaming, the sing along Into Oblivion one, and then they ended with Escape Artists Never Die.
Anyway, Glasgow, do you like rock and roll music? I said
Okay, next up, 5 days later, was TerraVision, back at the ABC, this time £16 to get in. So they played 23 songs from 5 different albums, and I thought this was a good night. And I've only really sort of known the 2 TerraVision albums, which are Regular Urban Survivors and How to Make Friends and Influence People. So the set list for me gets stronger towards the end of like the first section. So they played like 17 songs in total. So the last 2 were Middleman and Perseverance, and then they went off and they came and did an encore of about another 4 songs, which included Tequila. You might remember that one, which was in the charts. Tequila, it makes me happy. And then they went off and finished with probably 2 of their most well-known songs, which were Alice, What's the Matter, which I think was the first like TerraVision song that I ever heard, and then closed with Oblivion, ooh bab, baby, ooh bab. So yeah, a good night and good to see these guys again. I think this was about the 4th or 5th time that I'd seen them. So I'm back at the Carlin Academy, seeing a band that I'd already seen this year, and this was Alter Bridge. And this was £16 to get in. So it was obviously good to see them again. However, there wasn't really that many set changes because they were obviously still plugging the Blackbird album and it was on this tour. So there was like 3 different song changes. So they dropped Coming Home, Watch Over You and the Whole Lot of Rosie cover. And they added in One Day Remains, New Way to Live and In Loving Memory. So I was a bit gutted about that because I love the song Watch Over You, and in future shows like they normally sort of go to an acoustic bit where they do In Loving Memory and Watch Over You. So a bit disappointed that we didn't get that, but I do remember and loved singing along to In Loving Memory. So yeah, it was good. They played 16 songs in total, and they opened up with Come to Life like they did in January. And some of the order of the songs was pretty similar, apart from the ones that they switched in. The only difference being they went off after Metalingus for this, before coming on with an encore, which was Broken Wings. Again, they had that cover of that Robert Johnson song. I'm not sure why that's in there, like, not a fan of that. I don't know if their cover was good, but I've listened to the song by the old guy himself and it's crap, in my opinion. And then they finished in Rise Today, which, yeah, I've said previously at the start of the video, I'm not a huge fan of that. It's alright, but it's just a bit like, yeah, yeah, Rise Today. Like that. Okay, next up, seeing my Welsh favourites again, Bullet For My Valentine. Right, but no, this one's at the Corn Exchange in Edinburgh. It was £18.50 to get in. So obviously still on the Scream Aim Fire tour. So I remember me and Andy went to this. We had the next day off work. So we went through and we stayed in hotel accommodation for the night. And we got a taxi to the gig because we weren't sure where Corn Exchange was. So yeah, that was the first time at that venue for me. It reminded me of like a mini Barrowlands. I think from memory it's got like pillars at the side of it and we're looking down towards the stage. So yeah, quite impressed with it. I thought it was not bad venue wise. I think it's now called the O2 Edinburgh. I'm not sure. Anyway, they played 15 songs in total, so a couple more than Glasgow, but maybe that's because they don't play Edinburgh that much. I think they've only played Edinburgh twice when I was looking through the archives. So again, they opened up with Scream Aim Fire, and then you had hits such as Tears Don't Fall, Hand of Blood, 4 Words to Choke Upon, Suffocating Under Words of Sorrow, and they finished up with The End before going off and doing an encore of Waking the Demon, and then the slow one, Forever and Always. So yeah, good to experience them in a different venue. Next was another first for me, and this was seeing Extreme at the Carlin Academy. It was £28.50, and this was in the Take Us Alive tour. So they played 18 songs across 5 of their different albums, and the majority of it focused on Extreme 2, Pornograffiti, and there was 5 tracks from that. So it was myself and Andy that went to this. So the previous year in Holiday in Gran Canaria in 2007, I remember playing the Pornograffiti album, and Andy was like, who are these guys? He'd never heard of them. And it's like really good, really catchy, infectious like songs. So when they came, we grabbed the chance to get tickets. So it was a good night. You know, they played a lot of the songs that I recognised. I don't know all of Extreme's albums. I've only bought that album and heard some of the other songs. So being able to hear stuff like It's a Monster, Play With Me, I think I knew that from Guitar Hero. I played that in Guitar Hero, and that's where I knew that from. More Than Words, obviously singing along to that was a good one, where they came out with like the acoustic guitar and the crowd was all singing along to that as well. So that was a good moment. That was about halfway through the set. And then we had Flight of the Wounded Bumblebee, which is like sort of guitar solo for a couple of minutes. And then it goes into the den, den, den. It goes into the Get the Funk Out. So that was good. So they went off after that, and then they did 3 more songs, coming out with Am I Ever Going to Change, another slow one, Wholehearted, and then the sort of faster one, Mother, Don't Want to Go to School Today. So yeah, really impressed with my first time seeing them, and it was a good gig. Another favourite of mine was the Wild Hearts, and this was at the Barrowlands. £18.50 to get in, and they played 18 songs across about 5 different albums, and the most featured album was Earth vs the Wild Hearts. You had 4 songs on there. So they opened up with Vanilla Radio, which is always a good one to get the crowd into it, giving it the old "Where's my Elvis? Where's my Elvis?" And then they proceeded with a whole bunch of hits. So you had like Sucker Punch and Just in Lust, Nita Nitro, Getting It. You had Nothing Ever Changes But the Shoes, and they finished on I Want to Go Where the People Go. So yeah, a really good, strong set list in my opinion, and another good night seeing the Wild Hearts. Okay, I'm breaking my code of doing this in date order, and I'm going to give you the last gig of the year, which was ABCD. And that was at the Cat House, and it was £9.50 to get in. So similar to last year, this was like the last gig of the year, sandwiched between Christmas and New Year's Eve. So I can't really remember too much about these guys, because I've seen quite a few AC/DC tributes down the year, and I couldn't find any footage on them, so sorry again, guys. Okay, so the last gig that I'll talk about for the year, which was obviously my second last gig of the year, it was in December, right enough. So this featured Slipknot, Machine Head, and Children of Bodom. Is that how you pronounce it? Bodom? And it was £29.50 to get in. So the openers were Children of Bodom, and I don't really know their stuff. I can't really Can't really remember if we were in time to watch them or not. I did find some footage of them, and I've sort of listened to them in the last couple of days in the run up to doing this video, and they sound alright, so maybe one that I'll need to go and check out. So they played 7 songs. Okay, next up was Machine Head, and they played 7 songs. So this featured heavily from the Blackening album, being their most recent album. And they opened up with Clenching the Fists of Dissent, and then they went into Imperium, which is one of my favourite Machine Head tracks, so that was the only song to feature from the Through the Ashes of Empires album. And then they had 2 songs from Burn My Eyes album, which was Old, and then they finished on Davidian. So obviously headlining the night we had Slipknot. So this was as part of their All Hope Is Gone tour, supporting the album that was out a couple of months earlier. What I find strange though is that they actually only played 2 songs from that album, which were Dead Memories, the slower one, and Psychosocial. Don't get me wrong, I was glad to hear that one. That's one of the ones that I do like. But 7 of the songs featured from their debut album, Slipknot, and 3 from Iowa and 3 from Subliminal Verses. So a bit strange that, you know, that's the tour, but they only play 2 songs from it. On the set list itself, it was good. You had Before I Forget, Dead Memories, like I said, and Psychosocial, Heretic Anthem, Spit It Out, Duality, which is one of my favourite tracks. And then they went off and they did an encore of People Equal Shit and Sick. And so, yeah, that was it. So it was a good way to round off the year. So that's all the gigs from 2008.
But not until I say, shut the fuck up. Not until I say, shut the fuck up. Is it clear, you crazy sons of a bitch? Oh shit. On my signal, unleash hell. Joey! Let's take these motherfuckers home, man. I say, shut the fuck up. Not until I say, shut the fuck up. Is that clear, you crazy sons of a bitch? Oh shit. On my signal, unleash hell. Joey! Let's take these motherfuckers home, man.
So hopefully you'll join me on the next Relive the Music video, which will be all about the year 2009. So just as a wee sneak preview, in that I'll be talking about albums by Steel Panther, which was Feel the Steel, and also the Wild Hearts released Chutzpah. And in the gigs section, amongst others, I'll be talking about going to see Papa Roach and Shinedown, and also one very big gig which took place at Hampden, and this band's playing this year later on at Murrayfield. Get your guesses in, it's not difficult. Okay, so lastly I just want to say a big thank you again to everybody who stayed and watched my video all the way through. It does mean a lot to me, and hopefully you enjoy it as much as I do making them for you, albeit it takes me about 12 hours to make these videos. So if you have enjoyed it, then it'd be great if you could give it a wee thumbs up. Think about subscribing to the channel if you don't already do so, and you would help me out if you were to share it as well and say to your friends. I'm trying to get towards the 2000 mark. So like I say in most of these, if you were at the gigs or you saw these bands on their respective tours, then let me know in the comments what your memories are, because some of mine are a bit vague, but hopefully it will get better now that I'm kind of getting to the years where I've got footage and photos from it. So until the next one, thanks for watching and have a good day.
Oh, friend! Oh, new friend! Oh, friend! Please be my friend! Oh, friend!